The world we live in is beset by changes from all sides. But through it all, one thing remains common: the hunt for a leader who's empathetic, who has a greater purpose, and who cares truly for our well-being. I'm sitting today in conversation with one such leader as part of my next C-Suite conversation. Let's head into the conversation with R. Gopalakrishnan, an author and corporate advisor, and a man with many feathers in his cap. R. Gopalakrishnan has been a corporate leader for 58 years. 31 in Unilever, 18 in Tata, and over a decade as an author and commentator. In that time, he has served as chairman of Unilever Arabia, as MD of Brook Bond Lipton and vice chairman of Hindustan Lever, as director of Tata Sons and several Tata companies. Apart from serving as a director on the Tata parent board, Tata Sons, he serves as an independent director of the Press Trust of India and mentors a few startups. He is actively engaged in both instructional and inspirational speaking. Marksman Daily presents C-Suite Conversations. We are here today with Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan in the latest episode of C-Suite Conversations. Sir, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Sir, you've led large organizations, large teams across geographies over decades. Much has changed, of course, in that ensuing period. But if I were to ask you, from the perspective of leadership principles, what stands true even today? What would those approaches, principles be?
Well, as you said, many things have changed, and I don't want to go into what those changes are because they are in the public domain. Right. But having been around for more than 50 years, I can say there's been a very significant shift in three respects. First, the demands and the possibilities of technology. The second is the increasing emphasis on analysis and rationality. And third is the equally increasing emphasis on soft skills, humanity, empathy with people. Now, these three seem to be tugging in three different directions, but they are definitely changes that have happened. What technologies we use today are vastly different and are accelerating compared to 50 years ago. The demand on analytical and rational skills is very high, because the technological tools allow you to do that. But conversely, the gap in human empathy and dealing with people and human beings is also making a big demand. And leaders are caught in this tri-junction, trying to find their way out of it.
So you touched a little bit upon technology, right? I want to tug at that thread a little bit because I think in the last 5 years or so, we've seen so much change packed into these few years, enough to last a lifetime for many people. And that's led to a lot of people ripping up the playbook, taking a fresh approach. But I'm not entirely certain that that needs to be done. How do you balance this need for transformation with drawing from trusted approaches that have been known to work, that can still work in today's day and age?
You know, balance is always achieved by not getting carried away with the tide. Technology is one example of a tide. There are many other things that happen. In your personal life, you get infatuated with a person or a leader. Those can also carry you away. I think that's where the balance really lies, because we have psyched ourselves into believing that technology is increasing at an increasingly rapid pace.
Right.
I would challenge that by saying, relative to where people were, technology was always increasing at a rapid pace.
Fair enough. Yes.
Right? In days when you wrote letters and sent it in read through red post boxes, if you got a message by a telegram, you felt alarmed because you said, oh my God, there's a telegram. It's something terrible. Yeah. Today, if you don't get a response to your WhatsApp, you start wondering whether the other guy has forgotten you. So I think these are all relative. Our own boat is moving faster, and things around us are also moving faster. The relative speed between the two boats is not that fast as it looks. And I think once you get this idea into your head, not for an intellectual exercise to prove that it's right or wrong, but to understand that if I am falling from an aeroplane coming down, initially it will be seeming to move very fast. Then I get used to it. By the time I come down, if the parachute opens, I feel it's okay. It's not so bad. And that's the attitude which will help us to get the right balance.
Speaking of balance also, sir, You've led global teams with a global mindset, and of course, you've written, you've talked about having a more India-centric philosophy to leadership as well. How do you draw from these two philosophies, get the best of both worlds to create teams in today's day and age that are resilient, that are adaptable, that are ultimately successful?
I like to take the metaphor of a geologist and an astronomer. Let me give you the metaphor first, and then you will understand exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
If I get hold of a very talented geologist and get hold of a very talented astronomer, told them to put into their backpack their various gadgets and shoot them off on a SpaceX to the moon or Mars or whatever, and get them to report back on what they see. What do you think the geologist will do? Well, he'll step off, he'll take out his kurpi, he'll take out his gadgets, go into the matter, and report back to you that there is water, zinc, whatever. The astronomer, on the other hand, will look up to the skies and he will ask himself the question, wow, what is this a part of? So there are two independent questions. The geologists are addressing what is inside this. The astronomers are addressing what is this a part of. And the answers are quite different.
Seeing the same thing from different lenses.
From completely different lenses. Now, what has happened when I began my career, or if you go back 40, 50 years, the emphasis was finding out what is inside this.
Okay.
So, you were given a system and then you were breaking it up into subsystems, you were breaking the subsystems into its components, and each component was being programmed in the software, etc., etc., etc. And that led to things like more efficiency, time and motion study, industrial engineering, then early coding. We were still doing drawing on drawing boards when I began my career, but now it's all digitized. So it's been moving more and more deep into what is inside this. On the flip side, there is a demand on leaders to answer the question, but what is this a part of? For example, if you're running a company, you can't keep on making the company more efficient ad infinitum, because if you treat it like a machine, at some stage the machine will give up. But a business enterprise is not a machine, it's a living thing. The rules of botany and biology also apply to it. And that is the shift that has happened. And I have found that studies of humanities or understanding the idea of business enterprise as a living machine helps a lot for leaders to adapt themselves and carry people with them. Because if you treat people as another cost item and want to reduce 7,000 people, then tomorrow 10,000 people, you get one kind of outcome. But human beings have always been human beings, and they will continue to be human beings, which means that they want to be clear on what is their role in the system. They want to feel valued for their contribution, and they want to feel happy that they have contributed. These three things are there since Adam and Eve, and that will not change no matter how fast technology moves.
Just playing into that human element a whole lot.
And we tend to forget it because it's just another cost item. Increase the man hours per ton, increase the number of scans you can get per minute, and reduce the number of people. But that's a mistake.
One more thing I wanted to talk to you about was your course on lessons they don't teach you as a leader. Are there any unwritten principles, unwritten lessons that you think today's leaders must heed?
I think so. And that was the principal purpose for which I developed that pedagogy. Because more and more, the educational system, which I'm not blaming, I'm just saying it is also trying to respond to the social need for better jobs, better paying jobs, etc., etc. I think the pedagogy has become very intensive. You load, when I see my grandchildren and my children when they were young, their backpacks and their homework and the demands seem to be very huge compared to what I thought was huge, but in hindsight was not so huge. Because we are teaching them more and more things that are teachable. In the process, inadvertently, we fail to help them to learn what is not teachable. At the end of the day, a human being becomes a leader because he or she has learned those things that are not teachable. What is teachable, everybody can learn. You may get first division, I may get second division. You may get a gold medal, I may get a bronze medal. But it's teachable. How do you learn the lessons which are not teachable? For example, power goes to your mind, you become egoistic. It's very difficult to teach that. How can you be highly accomplished and yet humble? It's very difficult to teach that. How can you look into the short term and yet look at the long term? It's very difficult to teach that. So I think the shift from increasing the load of teachable materials at the expense of the learnable materials is a shift that has to be figured out by a leader in his own mind, his or her own mind. And if you don't keep the space for learnability, then teachability will be saturated.
Because only so much of a theoretical framework can teach you. So
Exactly.
Sir, before I let you go, just one last question. I had to round things up by asking you to draw some words of wisdom, some learnings from your career. I know it's very difficult to do so in a minute or two, but if I had to ask you to glean some insights for our viewers back home, what would those be?
You know, at my age, I'm allowed to quote Vedanta because it's been there for 5,000 years, but each one discovers it when he's about to be 60, 70, 80, and I'm no exception. If I take the principles of Vedanta, because you did refer to natural wisdom, traditional wisdom, I am a great believer that one of the reasons why Indians are very successful when they go to do leadership jobs abroad is because looking at a system holistically is part of the Indian way of looking at things. If I want to go from here to the airport, I can't just go by Google Maps. I have to think of the traffic, the time, the school closing, the hospital there.
There are so many externalities at play.
And those all apply. So I think Vedanta says you have to do 4 things. And those are the 4 I would quote. First, become self-aware. Your enemy is not outside yourself, it's within yourself. Your own ghosts, your own delusions. So become self-aware. The second thing Vedanta tells you is protect the resources that help you to do your work. You're dealing with cameras, equipment, people, electricity. Protect them. Don't throw junk, don't throw, ESG, long before ESG came, protect your resources, soil, air, water, people, feelings. All these are resources for you. Third, it says serve other people before serving yourself. You want to be a unicorn, fine, but have your other people become decacorns before you.
Now we talk about purpose. In that sense.
And the fourth and the last one is take your decisions, but always show compassion in implementing them.
So wonderful.
These 4 are pretty easy to state. They are more difficult to remember. They are extremely difficult to practice.
And some spend a lifetime trying to practice it, learn it.
I call the future leader a she leader. Not because I'm feminizing it, though it's not a bad thing to feminize.
Absolutely not.
I think I'll just mention before we close that Eastern mythologies and Indian mythologies in particular have strong feminine gods. Lakshmi, Saraswati, Parvati, Durga, there will be multiple manifestations. If you look at Western mythologies, they are more towards male gods. This makes feminism something which appeals in Indian mythology. And that's why I call it she leadership, sustainable, humane, and enlightened. And if we have enough sustainable, humane, enlightened leadership in business, in enterprise, in government, in public affairs, hopefully through your efforts and many other people like you, this country is going to regain what it always had and lost it for a short time.
Lovely. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My conversation with R. Gopalakrishnan revealed many things, such as great leaders understanding when to go broad, when to go deep, and ultimately how to balance professionalism and empathy. Because what are organizations ultimately except the sum of the people they are made up of? Thank you for watching this episode of C-Suite Conversations. I'll see you in the next one.